The letter was stained, not by ink alone, but by blood that had long dried into the parchment. Sheriff Eli Turner's hand trembled as he folded it one last time, sealing not just words, but a promise made years ago, one that had haunted every sunrise since the war. It began on a quiet morning in the town of Red Hollow, the kind of morning that fools a man into thinking peace could last forever. The streets were waking, horses snorting softly outside the saloon, and the church bell tolled for Sunday service. Sheriff Turner adjusted his badge, polished until it gleamed like hope itself, and looked out over his town, his last line of peace in a land still bleeding from old wounds. But the world had changed since the war. So had he. Eli wasn't just a lawman, he was a survivor. A man who'd seen too much, lost too much, and carried the ghosts of both sides in his weary eyes. His left shoulder bore the mark of a bullet that should have killed him, and his heart bore something far heavier, a promise made to a dying brother in arms. That promise was simple. Find my little girl, Eli. Make sure she's safe, no matter what it costs. The man's name was Thomas Grant, a Confederate scout, once Eli's enemy, but in the chaos of war, the two men had saved each other more than once. When Thomas lay dying on that muddy field, he had pressed a blood-soaked letter into Eli's hand. The letter wasn't addressed to him, it was for a child who had never even met her father. Years later, Eli still carried it, unread, in his coat pocket. Then, one evening, the past came riding back into Red Hollow. A gang led by a man named Mason Crow, one of the last war vultures, came storming through, bringing hell with them. They'd robbed the stagecoach, killed a deputy, and were rumored to be searching for a Grant girl. The name sent a chill down Eli's spine. He called his remaining deputies together, but most were young, boys who had never heard gunfire echo through canyons. Red Hollow was quiet most days. But that night, the air was thick with the scent of coming death. As the gang entered town, torches burning, Eli stepped out into the middle of Main Street, coat fluttering in the dry wind. He wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about a letter in his pocket, and the face of a little girl he had never met. When Mason Crow saw him, he laughed. "Sheriff Turner," he sneered, still playing hero. "Step aside, we're here for someone, girl named Grant." Eli's eyes narrowed. "You ain't taking anyone out of this town." Behind him, in the shadows of the boarding house, a young woman watched, dark hair tied back, trembling hands gripping the railing. Her name was Abigail Grant. She'd arrived in Red Hollow just weeks earlier, looking for work. No one had known who she really was, but Eli had suspected. Something in her eyes, familiar, lost, searching, told him she was the one. Now the war that had taken everything from him had finally caught up. The gunfight that erupted was nothing short of thunder. Bullets split the air, windows shattered, and the old saloon went up in flames. Eli fought like a man possessed, every shot deliberate, every step forward a defiance of fate itself. His deputies fell one by one, but he didn't stop. Not while Abigail still had a chance. Then came the moment that would define his life, and end it. Mason Crow aimed his rifle at the girl cowering behind the trough. Eli saw it from across the street, and without a second thought, he ran, straight into the bullet's path. The impact threw him to the ground, the world spinning into silence. Crow raised his gun again, but before he could fire, a single shot rang out. Abigail, tears streaking down her face, stood behind the sheriff's revolver, the same gun her father once carried. Crow fell, and the rest of his men fled into the darkness. When the smoke cleared, Abigail knelt beside the dying sheriff. His badge was cracked, his breathing shallow, but there was peace in his eyes. He reached into his coat, pulling out the old letter. "Your father wanted you to have this," he whispered. He was a good man. Abigail opened the letter with shaking hands. The words were faded, but still legible. "My dearest Abby, if you are reading this, it means I didn't come home. But know this, I fought believing you'd live in a world better than the one I leave behind. Trust the man who brings you this letter. His name is Eli Turner, he's the kind of man who keeps his word." Her tears fell onto the paper, mixing with the old blood stains. She looked down at the sheriff. "You kept your promise," she whispered. Eli smiled faintly. Didn't have much left to give, except that. His hand slipped from hers, his eyes fixed on the dawn breaking over Red Hollow. Days later, the town gathered to bury him. The people, once divided by war and fear, stood together for the first time in years. Abigail placed the letter on his grave, sealing it beneath his badge. It was said that the words written in that letter carried the spirit of both men, one who'd fallen in battle, and one who'd died keeping a promise made in blood. Years later, Red Hollow became a peaceful place again. And every morning, the new sheriff, a woman named Abigail Turner, would pin on a badge passed down through fire and sacrifice. On the back of it, carved in faint letters, were 3 words: